Hey everyone, super excited for today's episode, another ecosystem episode. I am Noah Rahimzadeh, as you all know, joined by Mariah. We have Dan Caldwell joining us from our very great partner in Klaviyo. He's Senior Strategic Partner Manager. With that, I will pass over to Dan for a super quick intro, and then yeah, we'll go from there.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah. So my name is Dan Caldwell, working at Klaviyo. I manage our integration partnerships here. I've been here coming up on 2 years at Klaviyo.
Awesome. Definitely want to get more into the career path up to this point and roll at Klaviyo. But before we do that, the audience knows we always like to talk about career progression to date, what got you here. But before we get there, even, I just want to say Dan and I go actually way back. Well, not way back, but before my time at Malomo, Dan and I met in person in San Francisco. And it was like right as things were opening up from
Yeah.
the post-COVID world. San Francisco was not in the greatest shape then.
Um,
uh, Hopefully, it's gotten a little bit better today. I haven't been there since, I don't think. But yeah, I was at Movable Ink at the time. So we worked together in that capacity and super happy that we get to continue the partnership. I think we're closer now than we were then. So it's been a good ride up to this point, and we got him on the podcast now. So things
yeah.
are obviously going well.
Yeah. It was a fun day in San Francisco. I think that was one of my first partner meetings since lockdown. And
Yeah.
it was because I was part of the mass migration from urban life to suburban life. I had a bit of a trek to get in there, but I'm like, I got to go visit with partners in person. Oh my God, made it in there. Yeah, low quiet in the city, but I've been in San Francisco since. The spirit is back in the city. It was a
Good.
little quiet that day, but the rebound is strong.
I'm very happy to hear that. Yeah, it was dark and gloomy both in like uh, in the or like the environmental nature, but also like
Yeah.
the
Oh, the
feeling.
fog's still there. The fog's
Yeah.
still there,
Oh,
but
I don't think it'll ever go away.
spiritually there's sunshine though. So
right.
yeah.
Exactly. I'm super happy to hear that. Well, yeah, man, thank you so much for coming on, spending some time with us. Like I said, I'd love to get into your career progression to date and what you're doing, what you're up to these days at Klaviyo.
Yeah, totally. So career progression. Let me go back a little bit. I started my career, well, very early on, managing some small businesses. My first tech job was in the ad tech world, doing customer support. So shout out to everybody who is in customer support role right now, where I just learned so much about the customer, so much about the product. And then after a year and a half, 2 years of that, I was able to transition into a partnership role in supporting some partners there. Did all different types of partnerships from e-com platforms to like large API resellers, and then technology partnerships similar to ours. And I loved technology partnerships. And saw a role open up at Klaviyo that was 100% dedicated to that type of partnership. So, and Klaviyo is doing pretty well. So jumped on the opportunity, joined when it was a team of one. And then we are now a team of nine. So a lot of investment, a lot of growth in partners.
And
We've,
that's just, sorry to interrupt, that's just on the tech partner side.
yes.
Got it.
Yeah. So global presence from in director level, we brought on partner development reps, and then just my colleagues. Expanded the team globally, London, Australia, and expanding in the United States. So that's been exciting. And then when I joined Klaviyo, we had 100 integrations, and now I think we have 265. And so a lot
Wow.
of growth, a lot of launches during those times. So it's been a fun ride.
Very cool. And for you specifically, what partner, how do you delineate like partner managers and directors like owning? Is it by region? Is it by sector? Like how do you, and then what's your area of expertise?
Yeah, a little bit of all of the above. And so there's always gray areas with this stuff. And
Yeah.
so some categories, some geo. And so we have our folks over in the London office. And so we'll split up and any like headquarter partners they'll manage there, but also have some partners that are maybe based in the US, but have a strong presence in those markets. And so we'll tag team those. And so base London or Australia, we could split up that way, but then it's also vertical based. And so I will do our shipping platforms, like this partnership here, also our help desk, ad tech, returns. Gosh, I'm probably forgetting one, but I've also done every single category at one time in my career at Klaviyo, and so I'm familiar with the full range of partnerships that we have.
Gotcha. Yeah. I've noticed like the more focused approach at Klaviyo. Like I said, we've known each other going back a couple of jobs, but I've been in and around the Klaviyo ecosystem to some degree for the last 3 or 4 jobs of mine. And I've definitely noticed a difference and a shift in like the more focused approach on the partner side. And I feel like it's been a great value add to partners and like just the broader Klaviyo ecosystem, to be honest with you. Do you feel that?
Absolutely. A lot more focus and investment on the tech partner side from Klaviyo. We could probably get into the details of why, but our tech partners just feed into like the core of what makes Klaviyo valuable. And I think that's always been understood by executives and a lot of people at Klaviyo, but the awareness of it and just how much it could mean to our customers and the way it helps them grow their business, stick around with Klaviyo as well. It makes a big impact. And so Klaviyo has been seeing that, so we've been investing more into it.
That's a perfect transition. Appreciate the background on the career so far. I'd now like to shift focus to Klaviyo overall. I would imagine that literally 100% of our listeners are familiar with Klaviyo, just in case there's 1 or 2 who aren't. Can you just give us a super high level overview of the platform? We'll obviously get more nitty gritty, but overview of the platform, the problem it solves, and who it's built for, who's like the ICP.
Yeah, absolutely. So Klaviyo is a combination of a CDP, an ESP, and a SMS provider in marketing automation. And so what we do is we ingest data from multiple different sources, from whether it's your Shopify store or other e-com platform, and then a lot of the other technology in our tech stack, and then use that technology to build in a automation layer. So you can send programmatically really personalized messages, email, SMS, push notifications, and also things like outbound webhooks. And so you can push data wherever you want to power other channels.
Very cool. Yeah, I noticed obviously saw the launch of Klaviyo 1 this year and getting more into the CDP space. Another great transition here because I don't think that I've heard of any other ESPs describing themselves as a CDP on top of an ESP or vice versa, and sort of combining that offering. I know that Klaviyo is obviously always focused on the data side. You mentioned it, and I'd love for you to talk more about how technology partnerships feed into that data first approach. But with the plethora of ESP offerings, messaging overall platforms, like you mentioned SMS as well, how would you say Klaviyo has been able to build such a stronghold in the Shopify ecosystem? I think about the investment that from Shopify earlier this year was obviously a major news in our ecosystem. So how do you think that Klaviyo has been able to get to this point?
Yeah, I think it all starts around the CDP aspect. And I'll first say, CDP is a category that isn't particularly well defined. And so we serve as the CDP for a lot of our merchants. And I could get into a little bit of that and why that's been a big part of our success. But at least on the technology partnership side, we also have great partnerships and integrations with other CDPs. And so there's overlap there. There's different definitions of what a CDP is. But at the end of the day, we're the CDP for a lot of our merchants. The big reason why, and this kind of feeds into the success and how we stood out as an ESP, because email's been around for a long time, well before Klaviyo was ever established. But Klaviyo is actually built not as a ESP. We didn't start off by sending emails and SMS. We actually started as a database company. And
I actually did not know that.
And so our founders, Ed and AB, they built a database company. They found a really good way to layer on some databases to make it easy to ingest data from all different sources, go from the eagle eye view down to the single object level in a very fast and effective way. After a while, they asked customers, "Hey, what are you actually using this database for?" And they said, "Oh, we're pushing it into our ESPs to send really personalized, good emails." And they're like, "Oh," and then they built email on top of that, and then SMS as well. So that's what separated us, because a lot of our competition earlier on started like, "Hey, how can I make it really easy to send like a good looking email?" We took the reverse approach of how can we get as much data as we can into a platform and automate that data to power really good emails. Now, the good, the quick and easy ones, they're working their way down on the data front, but I think it might be a little bit easier kind of when you start with that core foundation on the data side of things.
Sure, sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I had no idea that it started as a database company first. Always great when you can sort of find some product market fit and then realize that what you're doing is actually like tangentially valuable, like in this other sort of realm. And I think for email purposes, right, like it's a very cost effective channel, so it makes a lot of sense that that would have been the next progression in the offering.
Yeah.
I'm always curious about these things. Might be somewhat of a selfish topic, but there's this, as you and I know very well, Dan, like the channel conflict that lives within our day to days almost every day. You mentioned that you also have CDP partners, but you were founded as a database company. Now you've gone to market around, as you position yourself as a CDP, like how do you think about collaboration with the other CDPs in the space? And I know that's such a broad term, right? There's a lot of platforms that can fall under the CDP bucket, maybe some who say that they are and really aren't. So how would you kind of describe that working relationship and partnerships in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the approach that we take with all channel conflict, because this happens in our ecosystem, and we have some of my best partnerships and relationships that I have in this ecosystem or ones that there's some sort of competitive angle to it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we just take a customer-centric first philosophy with it, and we're going to let the customer choose. Like, hey, the companies may compete on these products and may try to build it better than the other person, but at the end of the day, we're really supportive of our customers choosing whatever technologies that they want to choose. If a company wants to use Klaviyo as their CDP, like awesome, we have some really good functionality to support that, and we think you're going to get a lot of value for it. But there's also ones that have been like purpose-built CDP, and what would be like one definition of that, and they've been doing it for a decade, and they do it really well, and they may have some functionality that Klaviyo doesn't have. So hey, how do we get an integration together here so you could get the best of both worlds? You could get the best of the CDP that fits the definition that you need. Klaviyo has our offering and our strengths that maybe be adding value to them, but how do we connect those things? And so I'm a little bit biased here, but a big believer in integration and connecting these platforms. And I think it makes us better too. Iron sharpens iron. And I think at the end of the day, the merchants are going to win because they're going to go with the winners in that space. And by building these integrations, if one person does one thing really well, the other person does the other thing, you still make it seamless to use those two platforms. And then, hey, you compete on the product side of things, but ultimately it's the merchant who's going to pick the winner.
I'm super quick question. Have you run into any circumstances where a client is asking for like a data integration between their CDP and Klaviyo and been met with resistance from the CDP platform that they were using? Or is it do you find typically that, the others in the ecosystem are willing to take that same approach?
Yeah. For the most part, people had the same philosophy as us.
Yeah.
There's a spectrum with that. I don't run into too many people who put up a firm stance against it. Sometimes, a salesperson might get a little bit defensive because they see a risk with the customer. Hard to avoid those things from happening. So you see a little bit of that. But most of the partners that, when you go in the directory and if they're listed on our website, they do really well. So we typically find the solution. And at the end of the day, the merchant's going to get what they need, and we're going to be strong advocates for that, and we'll go to bat for them.
Awesome. Yeah, I like to think that we take a very, very similar approach here in our philosophy to going to market with partners, and I think there's no better way to put it at a high level than like a customer-centric approach, which is what you're mentioning.
No, that's it. And we'll have direct competitors that we compete with a lot. And they'll have an integration into us. And maybe they're not the ones that we put on their website. But if something goes down about that integration, like I prioritize that heavily because I know our customers use it and our customers are using them for one product and using us for another. Like we take that approach. And ultimately, yeah, we would love to have the complete business there. But if the customers need it, then we prioritize it.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, shifting gears a little bit, but I'm very curious now. I didn't plan on kind of including this in the retention piece, but given that Klaviyo was founded as a database company, that to me screams like retention first, or at least retention was top of mind when it was founded, because a lot of times when you're acquiring new customers, you don't have a lot of information on them, right? The CDP aspect and like having a holistic 360 customer view comes after they've entered a brand's ecosystem, right? You're capturing all of this data around them. So before we get into Klaviyo specifically, I'm curious how you think about retention and what the most important drivers of it. And then I'd love to get into how Klaviyo thinks about retention as well.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, retention is a hot topic right now.
Very hot.
Term is retention is the new acquisition.
We're not mad about that.
Yeah, it makes our tools really important. But I could also tie in how I view retention can help on the acquisition front too. But the way I see it, I mean, it's growing in importance. I think everybody knows acquisition isn't as easy as it used to be. I'm not saying it was easy before, but it's getting more challenging. To drive traffic, you can't just like throw money at the problem like you used to. And so in a cost-effective way. And so really generating as much as you can with your customers that you have right now is super important. And so the retention piece, I think like when I think retention, I think, oh, how do you keep people around? But I think the way to think about it is how do you thrive with those customers that have come in? How do you build those relationships? Like, yeah, retention, like somebody might have a challenge with shipping. How do you retain that customer after a challenge? But then those that have a good experience, how do you continue to grow them? And not just grow them, but how can you help them feed the funnel? So like, yeah, how can we bring them back to buy something or upsell them? There's those opportunities, but it's also, how do I get them to leave a review? So then now your website has UGC on it that increases conversion rates on your website. How do you get them to refer in their friends or be a micro influencer for you? All those things can be back at the top of the funnel. So like retention is a big part of this. Let's keep those customers around. So let's thrive with those customers and use them to help feed that top of the funnel, which is becoming more and more difficult.
Amazing example. And when you were talking about that, I thought about our founding story at Malomo. Malomo was founded, to your point, Dan, exactly based on 85% of customers will not return after one bad shipping experience. So like that was the problem that we set out to solve.
Yeah.
It's a huge problem. But the initial thought wasn't like, let's turn shipment tracking into a revenue channel, which is what it's developed into. The initial thought was just, let's keep those customers. Over time, it's morphed into, okay, we figured out that we can keep them based on these proactive and branded notifications that we're sending. But what about product recommendations based on what you've already purchased? To your point, in terms of turning retention into an acquisition channel, what about making sure that for our subscribers in the post-purchase experience, they're already subscribed. We don't need them to subscribe again. Let's push them down a funnel to refer a friend because we know they're loyal fans. So it's creating this flywheel, right, between retention and acquisition that I don't think has, like I said, like even for us, it wasn't the first thought. The first thought was just, let's keep customers. Now it's morphed into growth through those customers.
Absolutely. I think it's something that people are starting to come around to now, a little bit more in the past, but not separating out your typical transactional strategies with your marketing strategies. And the use case I talk about a lot with shipping is like, yes, when somebody has 3 shipping delays, like let's notify them, let's keep them in the loop. And that's kind of the retention side of things. Because I think at this point with supply chains, People are pretty used to shipping delays at this point. I think what they
Yeah.
don't like is surprises when it comes to it. Like, where is that package? Oh, it's been delayed. Why didn't you tell me? I think that's the big thing. People want to avoid the surprises. So that helps on the retention side of things. But then for those who didn't, like, what do you, when you know somebody had a really good shipping experience, what are you doing from that? So when you, like, one of my examples in terms of LTV, whether that's revenue or being at the top of the funnel, I mentioned reviews.
Yep.
And so, like, something you could do in Klaviyo, this is something like we pride ourselves on in terms of like intertwining the data, is it's pretty common for somebody to have a flow that's asking for a product review. Traditionally, it's like 2 weeks after somebody purchased something on Shopify and the order was fulfilled.
Yep.
But that wasn't when it was delivered. That doesn't take into account what may have happened along the way. A lot can happen between, hey, the order is packed up and being sent out and it arrives to a doorstep. So let's get a little bit smarter. Let's use the event from our integration to trigger this not 2 weeks after the order was purchased, but after we know that the order had arrived. That's, hey, maybe let's split out those who had more than one shipping delay during that process. Let's bring in that retention message for them. Those who have the streamline message, perfect. Let's do a review request. But actually, let's go ahead and make sure that they didn't return the product. That's not a great experience.
Yeah.
They return the product. Do they have a ticket open with their customer support? We have integrations with Gorgeous and Zendesk. Helps out other platforms that can like pull in. Are they upset about something? Really bad time to ask for a product review. Really good way to get a 1-star review. So being really intentional and smart. And it's not necessarily like, oh, you don't want feedback or like 1-star reviews are the worst thing in the world, but you want to just avoid those tone deaf messages too. Like it doesn't feel good as a consumer when I'm being asked to leave a product review and I haven't even had the package or I returned it or I'm talking to customer support about an issue I'm trying to work through. So just being really intentional about those things, intertwining that data from all your different tech stack, because then you can generate more 5-star reviews. Now you know who could potentially be a VIP customer. So now it's like, hey, do you want to sign up for a subscription on Recharge and try to get the recurring revenue from them? Would you like to join our loyalty program? That's a great thing to check out. Or like, hey, are you pulling in how many Instagram followers they have from a platform like Gatsby on the influencer side of things? Can we now automate you into a flow to help enable you to share and get rewarded for sharing a positive experience? I think that's an overlooked area right now, to where the paid media on social is a little bit more difficult to do. Influencer has been around for a long time, but with really good data and automation, can you really empower a micro influencer platform?
Sure.
And all this is derived from the shipping notification that came in and it delivered, and just being really intentional and personalized and heard. And I think that's a key theme when we think about retention and thriving customers. Just speak to them based off their experience. They want to be heard, they want to be felt. And if you have a lot of customers, it's hard to do that one-on-one. So just being really smart and intentional about those messages you're sending out, intertwining as many different inputs as you can, just to speak to them as close to one-on-one as you can.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, Dan, like especially the data and walking through all the different applications of where you can use that data, like you said, for reviews all the way to subscription programs and even micro influencers. And I actually recently got a shipment email, and we chatted about this. We had Olipop on the podcast as well, and it was through their emails. And so I think Gatsby is pretty similar to, have you heard of Bounty? It's
yes.
like, okay. So
yeah.
I'm not, I've
about them. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I haven't ever seen Gatsby or seen their software, but it sounds pretty similar. I think Bounty is more like just for TikTok maybe, but I love that you can bring in, like, I haven't heard the use case of being able to bring in, like, look at a buyer's Instagram following or social media following, and then being able to like put them in a different experience based off of those shipment notifications. I think that's a really cool application that if you set it up right, like it adds to the flywheel, right? Like it adds more, and it creates, your starting point of like more UGC, and then being able to have, say, I know on the Bounty side of things, like you agree to a brand using your content on their page, right? Or like their website. So it just like streamlines kind of that process, so that it's like, oh, this influencer who's really good at making drinks or whatever their like category or expertise is in, they can then, be like compensated or motivated to continue associating with your brand and then sharing it with their following as well.
Exactly. And it's a splitting of people out too, because if you have a celebrity who comes, or is it just somebody who, for whatever reason, has like a massive following,
Right.
you're probably going to want to speak to them a little bit different than the person who has 200 followers. And so then it's like, hey, yeah, if a giant influencer comes through the door, I want to divert them to a different message, or just like one-on-one direct relationships. Like you can do those type of things. But even somebody with 200, like cumulatively, if you combine all those people, like I think that they could be more impactful than the macro influencer, because hey, like on a per person basis, that's going to be difficult to unlock, but combined, you could get really impactful. And I'd say the other thing is too, like those people aren't used to being able to be like kind of play their role as an influencer. It can be fun. I have friends who do this stuff every once in a while. It comes up. But I think most importantly, oftentimes those are the people who are most passionate about your brand. They want to go out of their way for it. They're having fun with this. They want to share their experience. And so it really just allows the automation for that to provide those experiences to the smaller folks, while also diverting those that you need the one-to-one conversation for somebody who really poses a really large opportunity with the large following.
I love that distinction too. It's really cool.
Yeah, like so many good use cases, Dan, that you just described based on one event that you're.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And I think a lot of it is, I mean, again, I'm biased. I'm an integrations guy. This is what I do. But I think a lot of people are thinking like one-to-one with these relationships. Like, how do I send a message about shipping through Klaviyo? But it's like, no, how do I intertwine everything in my tech stack? Let's get them integrated. They build off of each other. They complement each other.
So one thing I'm curious about, this is a little off the cuff, but the flows that you just walked through, like 4 or 5 different use cases that would require 4 or 5 different flows within Klaviyo. Is that something that, like, if a brand is listening to this episode and they're like, oh my God, I love that UGC use case, or I love that reviews use case, should they go to the Klaviyo team about that? Should they go to their reviews or their Malomo, their order tracking solution about that flow specifically? And is there a world in which Klaviyo builds like a flow library that has, even if it's partner built flows, or, even starting with just some preset flows? Maybe you already have that. I'm ignorant in this regard. So I'd love to know how tactically our listeners can maybe put some of this into motion.
Really good question. So yeah, because all these ideas are great, but like, how do you actually?
Yeah,
because it's easier said than done, but we do make it pretty easy. Takes a little bit of work, and like you have to block off some time to figure this stuff out, but it isn't too difficult. And so we do have some pre-built flows, but those are built off of, try to not get too much into the details here, but they're based off of integrations that Klaviyo has built. What we're working on is it's gonna take a good amount of time, but is that for any third-party developer like you all, we have 220 third-party integrations. Right now, they aren't able to submit flows into our flow library, but that is something that we are working on. Is the number one thing I advocate for. And I was just in a meeting earlier today talking about it. So we're working towards it. We're getting there, but right now they do have to be set up manually. But when you install the integration, the data will start to flow in. You can see it in your activity feed within Klaviyo, or if you go to like your segment builder or a flow trigger, those will be in there. If you do an integration, give it like 5 minutes, because those like events actually need to happen to see the Klaviyo account, but just give it a day or so. But you could go in there. I would say a lot of our top partners have built out really good content on the data that gets sent over, and how to build it out in flows. And hey, you may need to piece together some things of get the help center article about how to build the flow, and get the help center article of the data that a partner is passing into Klaviyo, kind of combining those. Some partners have already done that. But that's your best use case. If you do have a customer success manager with Klaviyo, they can bounce ideas off of you on this. But ultimately, just diving in there and setting up these flows. But when you go to that drop-down trigger, I'm sure if you're a Klaviyo customer using flows, you got in there and to like Shopify checkout. If you type in shipment, you'll see shipment delivery in there, if you have an integration.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I know one thing I think that we sort of pride ourselves on is like we'll actually go into our clients' Klaviyo instances and drop in
Yes,
our pre-built templates and flows, and like
big
that's
time.
pretty much plug and play at this point because they're like you said pre-built. So we just lean on the brands to help us, do the branding, and if you want to drop something a little bit more marketing focused in the very bottom, can't be much obviously, but a call out or whatever, we help them with that sort of strategy, but also the implementation. And I think that a lot of our partners have ended up doing the same. Obviously, it's not I don't think it's a major pain point. I'm not in CS, so I don't know if I can speak for Kat and her team, but I do know that like I love the idea of a flow library over time. And it's even something that we're thinking about at Malomo is building out like pre-built Klaviyo flows in our platform, kind of like a step-by-step guide to how you can do unique things, like you mentioned, to drive whether it's repeat purchases or UGC or acquisition through this retention channel, through like a refer a friend or something like that.
Yeah, love it. We appreciate your team leaning in and getting this done for our customers.
Okay, you did a great job of thinking through, I think, live. As far as I can tell, that was totally off the cuff. Use cases just based on one shipment notification, which is a transactional message. And so I'm curious if you thought about, are there other ways in which our merchants in the Shopify ecosystem can be leveraging transactional messaging to drive what we've now defined as retention, which is not just keep customers, but grow through those customers.
Yeah. Yeah. I think those different events of segments that you can create will just give you a little bit more glimpse into their customer journey. And so I think just in general, like you can apply that to any advanced segmentation that you have. I do think something that is overlooked though is the multi-channel approach, and that is like a big thing there, making sure that those messages that people need to hear about like are using SMS and email combined within these flows. And that's one thing that we make super easy is like these sophisticated flows that I'm talking about. You build up these triggers, but you drag over the email in the flow builder, drag over SMS, it's ready to go. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to use the right channel for what that customer prefers. But then also email and SMS are a little bit different. It's not just one or the other. It's a little bit of both. Like I'll give you an example, is if you're going to let me know that, hey, the package arrived, it's on your doorstep, which you could do with our integration. An email for that is great. I want that with SMS though, and we have data to support that the majority of people actually want these messages in SMS too. I tell you, with like porch pirates being a thing, people coming around taking stuff off the doorstep. I want to get before somebody else does. Or another example is my manager. She would get shipment of fresh meat sent to her, but she lives in Austin, Texas. It is very hot in Austin, Texas, and she forgets about the package for 8 hours, it spoils, and it just ruined her orders of any perishables. If she got that SMS, that wouldn't have happened, and she unsubscribed from that subscription because of it. So there's a lot of different use cases for that, but think about SMS as, hey, do they enjoy working with your brand through SMS? I think it's an amazing way to build a really good relationship, especially when you're doing what we're talking about, like building these advanced segments, being really thoughtful about their customer journey, what they're experiencing, what they may not be experienced, to send the right message, but maybe even more importantly, avoid sending the wrong message. You can do that. But if you send the right message, there's nothing like SMS to make sure you're getting it in front of your brand. And honestly, like my favorite brands I have on SMS, because I care about them and I feel heard, and I see it all the time. And with emails, I check my emails, I see them with my favorite brands, but I miss a couple. I don't miss an SMS. So think about those really important ones to be sending. I think on the transactional side, I think that's the easiest way for anybody who's like a little bit wary of, SMS is a newer channel, hasn't been around. People might be a little intimidated by it. Going the transactional route is a really good first step. I bet you're going to see that your customers really like it, and then you expand the use cases from there.
Yeah, that's really great insight into like the omni-channel approach. Our mutual friend Brandon from Electric likes to talk
Yeah.
about SMS and refer to it as like this is like you are messaging me on the same device that I get texts from my grandma. So like it's relevant to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's when I think the data becomes really, really important. What are you sending them, and are you being really thoughtful about what you're saying? But yeah, Brandon's a smart guy. He knows what he's talking
I have
uh,
a question for you, Dan, real quick.
about.
Because you said like I love that you said you want to make sure obviously that you're sending the right message,
Yeah.
but that you're not sending the wrong one.
Yeah.
So what would you say? Like I feel like we talk about like, oh, the right messages, like you just said to start out are transactional messages because across the board, like who you ordered something, you want to know about it, right? Like you made that decision.
Yeah.
And so what would you say like do you have any examples top of mind that of something that would be like the wrong message to send to someone?
That's a really good point. I think it's kind of similar to that reviews
Mm-hmm.
situation of just like, I mean, if somebody has subscribed to SMS, they're probably like a really interested customer of yours, potentially a good one. But even your best customers are going to run into some challenges. So, like, um, hey, if I have an open ticket with support, like, I probably don't want to 10% off for your new spring collection. Probably not the right time there because I might be frustrated with your brand at that time. And your customer support and Gorgeous may save me as a customer and keep me around. But if I'm pissed off about something and I get that SMS at an untimely time, I may unsubscribe. And that was consequential. You don't want to do that. So filtering out those who's going to be a bad experience and you go and build in these segments and filter those out. I think that can be really helpful. Being thoughtful about the promotion. So, hey, if you're going to send a discount, make sure it's a good one. And I'm not a big believer in sending somebody an SMS every day, too. I think there's a frequency and a respect that you need to have for somebody's text inbox, and be really thoughtful and just like intentional. There's something really specific to be said. I'm not going to send you the same message every day about it. I'm not a big believer in that. Um, so on the Gorgeous thing too, I mean, on that topic too, I think a big thing when you send SMS to know what they're saying back to get back to those people quickly, because that could also be a poor experience with SMS, not just like what you're sending with them, because you can send such great stuff, but then also taking care of the reply. And so we have an integration with Gorgeous and also Zendesk. So if somebody replies to a Klaviyo SMS, that gets sent into Gorgeous or Zendesk for customer support to immediately follow up with. Really good value add, because not everybody's in Klaviyo constantly looking for those replies, but that is set up logistically in those help desks. And so we enable that for them.
Yeah, I could so see that being something that like if someone wasn't on top of it or like didn't have it automated to pop up, like it could just totally like just be ignored or not even seen of like a reply to SMS. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's an awesome use case. I want to shift focuses. I think that the SMS thing at Klaviyo is phenomenal, by the way. I
Yeah.
think one of the things that sticks out is just the data first approach and being able to easily orchestrate across channels, with the great email infrastructure that you already have, and now adding the SMS channel. I know that the customers that we've set up with SMS on our end via Klaviyo have been seeing great results and very happy with it. So congrats on that. Shifting focus, we've got about 5 to 10 minutes left. So I want to we're coming up to the holidays, craziest time of the year.
Sure is.
This is my first holiday season in the Shopify ecosystem.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm excited. I don't know what to expect. I don't know if like the 20-year pros in this ecosystem know what to expect this year. So what are you guys doing at Klaviyo, and maybe even you specifically, Dan, in your role to prepare for Black Friday? And are there any cool trends that are sort of sticking out to you in terms of what brands are doing to maximize the potential of this holiday season?
Yeah, really good point. Really good question. I think it's just getting ahead of it, at least in my experience. If you do this right, then like your marketing side of things is like it should be taken care of here soon, because a lot of it should just be automated and ready to go. And so we're really pushing our merchants to like dive into the account, set up these flows. If there's use cases that we're talking about here or you're seeing elsewhere that you want to intertwine, you can set that up now, because I know in other aspects of the business, it's going to be absolutely crazy to like fill orders, those type of things, like things are going to happen. So as much work that you could do early on to just set that up, set it and forget it, if you will, do that in Klaviyo. So that's the big thing that we're pushing people to do. But the other thing is too, I'm really advocating, or we're really advocating for our merchants. When we talk about retention as a new acquisition, like there's not just the focus on, hey, how can I drive a lot of net new business from this, but how can I use this as an opportunity to continue to grow my business later on? And I think it's a really interesting time and like the hardest time to understand your customers and why they're there. Because it's gift giving. And so that's when it's interesting. This is why I'm an advocate for my survey partners. When you think of somebody like an Octane AI or a Jebit or a Typeform or like a Fairing for a post-purchase, like all of those can help you understand who your customer is, what are they really doing there. There's a lot of platforms that are really good to help. Hey, they're looking at this and this product, so they're likely to like this other one. But are they looking for themselves, or are they looking for their mom or for their girlfriend? And it's gift giving. So understanding who that person is and who they're shopping for, because it's really helpful for after Black Friday or Monday, you're trying to grow LTV. Now, if that is somebody who purchased for themselves, you probably have a playbook. You know how to like try to like grow LTV from your existing customers. But if it's not, then you're actually not probably trying to sell to the person who just bought your product, but the person who just bought two. So instead of asking, like if I buy something for my mom, like instead of asking me to join a loyalty program for a company that does earrings or something, like, yeah, I'm not your customer for a loyalty program on earrings, but my mom may love it. And so are you giving me a clear path to invite my mom? Like, oh, my mom, you love those earrings. Hey, here's that company in case you like more. That's a really good opportunity. Or like, if you can ask, hey, who are you buying for? And I say my mom versus my girlfriend. Now, do I care about Valentine's Day or do I care about Mother's Day sales? Mm-hmm. And then you can have an outreach to me coming up towards Mother's Day of, hey, Dan, did your mom like those earrings? We have 20% off coming up for Mother's Day. Check out this new collection. I'm like, awesome. Like that could be super helpful. So just as clearly as you can understand why they're not just the products that they're looking at and the upsell stuff, but the truly why, or a seasonality aspect too. Another example I talk about is just like with sporting goods. Like, are they buying a beanie because it's getting cold and we're going into winter and they're walking to work with it? Or are they buying a beanie because it's ski season coming up? Mm-hmm. And if you can understand that, then when you're speaking to them, whether it's product recommendations or just the content of your emails, are you talking about ski season and skiing and whatever product you sell that helps support that? Or do you have like nice dress gloves because they're walking to work, they're cold and their fingers are going to get cold? Let's try to cross-sell this advice. So understanding exactly what they're there for can help kind of tailor those. And I'm not giving specific examples, but people can connect the dots on their own use cases. But I think it's a really interesting opportunity, challenging opportunity, but I think there's some really good programs out there to help.
Yeah, that is awesome. I'm loving all these use cases because they're like very tangible and real. And I think that it's very much in line with a lot of the things we've been talking about, both internally, externally with our partners and externally with our clients as well, which is basically like brands spend all of this money around acquisition around Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Normally they do see a very significant uptick in new customer acquisition. But to your point, why are the customers there? And what are you doing to make sure that they come back? And understanding the dynamic between or the variance between your customers and your consumers and targeting based on, it's like McDonald's, right? Like you're not necessarily marketing to the mom who's buying the kid McDonald's. You're making sure that the kid has a fantastic experience and wants to come back and begs and cries to come back. So the mom doesn't have a choice.
Annoys their mom enough to get them back.
Right. And so I think that there's a lot of similarities there and some great use cases, Dan. Okay, I didn't do this at the top, so it's my fault, but we always like to ask some personal questions. So one or two things that you're excited about in your personal life before we wrap up here?
Oh, I'm excited in my personal life. I'm getting golf lessons soon, and
Exciting.
I have hope I won't still suck at golf afterwards. We'll see. I've never tried so hard to be so terrible at something. So I'm really working on that. We'll see if it pans off. It probably won't, but I'll go in optimistic.
I
Uh,
feel your pain on that.
yeah, and then the second one, I think I'm going to Vietnam and planning a trip in spring. I'm very excited. I've been there before,
Wow.
but my girlfriend and I were going to go back the third week of March 2020, and
Very
that didn't end up happening for we all know why. But I
Mhm.
still have the itinerary on my refrigerator, and I
nice.
think this year might be the year that we make it over there.
That's
Wow.
so you're going back for a second time. So I imagine that you recommend it.
I love it. Yeah, one of my favorite countries I've ever been to. Was fortunate to spend a month out there, a few months in Southeast Asia, just a great part of the world in general, but really loved Vietnam. So trying to get back there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't relate to that one, but the first one, I got golf lessons this year for the first time.
Gotta go.
I broke 90, so I would say
Hey, there you
That's
go.
good. I don't know much about golf, but I know that's good. So,
That's good
once.
to me. It's all about it's a perspective game.
Yeah,
yeah.
right. Exactly. It's all relative. It's all relative. But the funny thing is I took one lesson. I bought six when I bought new golf clubs, which I also got this year. And my golf game just was in the dumpster. It was a dumpster fire for most of the summer because of that one lesson like changed everything and I couldn't figure out what he was trying to tell me to do. So I haven't been back, but I've got 5 lessons to go this winter. So that'll get me through hopefully.
Say you get worse before you get better with golf lessons. So let's hope the
Right.
second part of that comes true for you.
Let's hope. Okay, last one. You've obviously had a pretty awesome career so far, doing awesome things at Klaviyo. What's one tip or trick you have, or resource that you have that's helped you get to where you are? And that could be, you could take that from like a career advice standpoint. You could take that from a merchant, that we serve standpoint, wherever you want to go with it.
Yeah. Where to go? I think I'll give like a high level one and just like
Yeah.
stay curious, ask a lot of open ended questions. Be nice to people. I feel like that goes a long way. Lead with empathy. Big believer in that stuff. And act selfishly. I do think that the nice guy wins in the long run when you look at it. I think like a little bit more tactical on the career side of things is something I talk a lot about that helped me get into a job that I love. Is I talked to a lot of people who are earlier on in their careers that or like support like I was or a sales role or a customer success role that want to do like product or want to get into a role like mine or just want to grow up higher, but just getting as close as you can to those people you see in those roles. The advice that I got, which was really good, is whose job do you want at this company, and just go befriend them.
Yeah.
Show early signals that you're interested, and if it's you're trying to get a product role somewhere, just like find the top product manager, put some time on their calendar, ask to join their sprint planning sessions, those type of things. I just think as close as you can get, like try to get a side project associated with it. So when you go to that interview or you apply for the job opening that opens up, they remember you. Oh, they expressed early interest in this role. They're interested, and you're not just like coming in as like a cold call for a job. So yeah, that'd be
That's
my.
awesome.
Great
I love how
advice.
the theme of this podcast was like macro level, like strategy. And then every time we were able to get down to like the tactical level and actually implementation. So
I like the tactical stuff. So I hope somebody got something tactical.
100%. Yeah, man. This was awesome. Thank you so much for joining. Excited to get it live. I think probably in the next few weeks. So we'll obviously do a big promotion around that when it happens. But thanks so much for joining, Dan, and really appreciate you spending some time with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Bye.